Berserk is written and illustrated by Kentaro Miura. In 1989 it got serialized by the now defunct magazine Monthly Animal House. It was then replaced in 1992 by the bi-weekly magazine Haku Sensha. The manga is still ongoing, with currently having 343 chapters. However, did you guys know that Miura started his career as a mangaka at the age of 10? His first work was titled Miu Ranger, appearing in some of his school's publications. In 1985, at the age of 19, Miura was accepted onto an art course at Nihon University. He started two more manga during this time, Funtanabi and Noah. They were both submitted to the Shonen magazine, later awarding Miura a prize for the best new author for Funtanabi, and they published Noah in their magazine towards the end of the year. However, the publications were short-lived as Miura had a difference of opinion with one of the editors, causing no further work to be published. Later in 1988, at the age of 22, while Miura was still in college, he released a 48-page one-shot manga called Berserk, which later became a prototype to the Berserk series. This won Miura a prize from the Komi Manga School, but although the 1988 Berserk is said to be a precursor, it isn't actually part of the official story. There are many differences from Guts' design to the plot. For instance, the band of sacrifice on Guts is much more rounded and does not appear on the back of his neck, but rather over the right side of his chest. More differences include a conversation between Guts and his companions Puck about apostles killing Guts' mother before his very eyes, which is implied to have started his revenge against them. I would recommend reading it as it is known as Chapter 00 or literally Berserk the prototype. Berserk is known to be brutally graphical and challenging to some viewers. When it comes down to actual inspiration of Berserk, Miura stated in an interview that the concept of Berserk came slowly over time. The idea itself was the materialization of all the shows, animes, movies, and even real-life news Miura had seen. In his own words, he said, "When I hear those stories, not that I want to find some kind of answer, but it makes me want to visualize what's happening. I just want to see the world in my own way. The idea becomes clearer and polished in the process." I think I've said this in an interview before, but when I learned about the Tsuchizuko and the Futsuzuko, it did influence Berserk. I was writing Berserk watching the incident on the news, and a little while later I wrote about some mass psychology in Berserk. I believe that incident made me want to write about it so I would understand it myself. In the beginning, about up to volume 5, I was still writing stuff that I had thought of when I was in college, so my real life reflected a lot in the stories in the beginning, and after a while I started to see the bigger picture. The Tsuchizuko and the Futsuzuko he was referring to are the Tutsi and Hutu. Miura was speaking about the Rwandan Civil War, which tragically led to the genocidal slaughter of the Tutsi and some moderate Hutu in Rwanda by the Hutu majority. However, that's not all that inspired Berserk. Going Saga, a Japanese fantasy novel written by Kaoru Kurimoto, influenced Miura significantly. The novel won the 2010 Saiyan Award for long fiction and its longest continuing single writer's work in the world, with a total circulation exceeding 28 million. Miura mentioned he started reading it when he was in junior high and was still even reading it during the creation of Berserk. Miura also stated that the conception of the world he created within Berserk wasn't really based off history in particular, but from the films like Excalibur and Conan the Barbarian, he came up with the dark fantasy concept from those type of movies. There are many characters and groups within Berserk's universe, but have you ever wondered about the original design or the inspiration for these characters? Well, in the case of Guts, in an interview, Miura actually stated that there wasn't any particular model for Guts in terms of his personality. When asked if Guts was inspired from history, he said no, but coincidentally there was a historical figure named von Berlichingen who was also nicknamed Guts of the Iron Hand. Gottfried, who was born in 1480, was a German imperial knight and leader of the band of mercenaries, much like Miura's conception of Guts, who was part of the band of the Hawks. However, the similarity doesn't stop there. As his nickname suggested, Gottfried wore an iron prosthetic hand compared to Guts. Miura was very surprised when he learned about this, as he had already started writing Berserk. Miura also stated the main influence of Guts' personality is mainly based off himself and his close friends and not in any particular individual. However, he did mention that the artistic design for Guts was inspired from actor Rutger Hauer, who Miura saw playing as a mercenary in a medieval movie Flesh and Blood. Also, Guts' design's concept wasn't always the same. His appearance has changed during the process of writing Berserk. As originally in the Berserk prototype, Guts was shown wearing an eye patch over his right eye, and his sideburns were a little longer. Guts' crossbow also didn't initially attach to his metal arm, and the sword he carried was slightly different from his Dragon Slayer. So, Griffith or Griffith, however you want to pronounce it, like Guts, Miura stated that Griffith was also inspired after no one in particular. The fact that Griffith possesses some feminine traits seems to be heavily influenced by the Bishonen theme. However, his design concept is said to be very similar to Fricka, a young white-haired girl who Guts rescued from a group of bandits in the Berserk prototype chapter. Fricka then joins and follows Guts throughout the story. Although Fricka is being a female whilst Griffith being a male, they still share some similarities apart from their looks. Fricka and Griffith both were very trusting of Guts and thought highly of him to the point where they have developed some affection towards him in some way or another. It is fairly possible that Fricka was the foundation of Griffiths. So, the Band of the Hawks. The conception for the Guts' friends and the Band of the Hawks was mentioned by Miura to be actually based off his friends from college. The concept of the name for the mercenary groups itself was inspired from the Hollywood movie Star Wars. The Band of the Hawk is named after the Millennium Falcon, although when it was translated into Japanese, it came with an ambiguous hiragana word, which more accurately means hawk rather than falcon. However, although Band of the Hawk is more of a correct literal English translation, Miura stated that the Band of the Falcon is a more appropriate considering its namesake. God Hands. The conception for the God Hands seemed to be inspired by science fiction novels and other artistic pieces. The God Hands design also resembles the Cenobites from the Hellraiser movie series, which was based on Clive Barker's novel of which Miura is believed to be a fan of. Void, in the original TV anime series, Void served as the series narrator. Void's oversized, exposed brain and skeletal face are also reminiscent of the evil Martians from Mars Attacks. Conrad, his name comes from Rogers and Call Me Conrad. Ubik is named after Philip K. Dick's Ubik, which Ubik comes from Bosch's painting. Slan, her name comes from A.V. Van Vocht's Slan. Femto, although Miura hasn't mentioned much about Femto, there has been some fan speculation that Femto's design could have been subconsciously inspired from Winslow in the 1974 movie Phantom of the Paradise. Berserk embeds a mixed theme consisting of politics, history, mythology and religion throughout the manga. Although Miura mentioned that he didn't intend to set the Berserk universe during any point in time within our world, Berserk actually does seem to take place during the late 14th and 15th century of the early modern Renaissance era, which was several hundred years after the Crusades and begins within the ending of the 100-Year War. Which in fact, along the War of Roses, seems to have been the basis of the 100-Year War in Berserk to some degree, explaining the fairly heavy use of cannons and cavalry but no handheld firearms, especially regarding the 100-Year War between England and France that seemed to have inspired the war in Berserk, not only in name but also in battle tactics. The similarities between the strategic use of bowmen, foot soldiers and cavalry, which is seen during the betrayal of the Band of the Hawks, and the increase of cannon use is quite familiar to the 100-Year War in our world. Not to mention, just like the English, the Band of the Hawks used really light cavalry against the old and rigid heavy knights. Although there are differences, such as in Berserk many of them were wearing munition armor that had not been present during the 100-Year War. However, in an interview, Miura actually addressed this matter when he was asked about any references he uses to draw. He summed up that he uses a collection of photographs of armor in Japan. In his own words, he said, "Pictures are the best references for cartoonists. It's also about how something looks. If we really talk about technical stuff, you'll notice that some armors aren't supposed to be used around that time, but I really don't go that far." Religion is also portrayed with a unique darkness within the Berserk universe by revolving around sacrificial rituals, the cruelty of fate and the work of demons. The brand of sacrifice is a great example of the ritual required for one to gain power to either become an apostle or a god hand, which is very similar to religious beliefs in our world today with the concept of selling one's soul and making a deal with the devil. Even the Holy See religious order's hierarchy, symbol and beliefs are similar to Middle Age Catholicism. And the term Behelit may have been derived from Beheret, the Syriac word for Satan. The eclipse is another possible reference to Christianity, as there is 216-year time gap between every eclipse, and that may be a reference to the number of the beast in the Bible, 666. The triple occurrence of 666 translates into 6 cubed or 216 years. And while officially the eclipses can be seen as transcendence for God Hand members, it can be also a form of rebirth for surviving sacrifices. For instance, Guts has been submerged in a pool of blood and then re-emerged becoming an apostle hunter, while Casca was reduced to an infantile mental state. One may take it far as to say that they have been baptized to their true selves. Berserk also follows a theme of destiny and fate. One of many examples is the interaction with Griffith and Casca. Their meeting began when young Casca was about to be raped by Noble, which was prevented by Griffith's intervention as he stumbled upon her and gave her the means to defend herself, later which transformed Casca into a stoic warrior. When Griffith transcended into Femto, he sacrificed his past life by cutting ties with his friends. He also completely destroyed the persona and existence of Griffith by gang raping Casca until she retreated so far into her mind and she regressed to the mentality of a child. This can be seen as a representation of Femto wiping the deeds of Griffith by undoing his action of saving Casca. Although Miura is hardworking, the first volume of Berserk had limited success. It wasn't until the release of the Golden Age arc that Berserk finally became popular. In 1997, with the supervision of Miura, the manga was later adapted into an anime. A number of changes were made throughout the Berserk anime, however, such as the removal of certain characters such as Puck, Donovan, Skull Knight, Teresia, the Count, and Wild. The reasoning behind this was to fit the series within 25 episodes. The opening scene with the female apostle was also cut out from the anime. Likewise, the anime went through some censorships with filtered out scenes that were excessively violent, like removing much of the gore in favor of heavy blood splatter, instead of brains, eyeballs, intestines flying all over the place. The sex scene between Casca and Guts was also cut down, as well as Casca's gang rape scene was heavily cut down. The movies ended up having to go through 2 edits, one for the theatre and another as a DVD for home use, which was produced without these censorships. The 1997 anime ended up covering Volume 1, some references to Volume 2, the end of chapter of Volume 3, it covered all of Volume 4 through 10, and then Volumes 12 and 13. Volume 11 is overlooked entirely in the anime to remove the character Wild, but the events of the volume are instead replaced with a similar scenario involving other characters. Since then, the manga has made its way up to 37 volumes, and earned Miura a cultural award in 2002 which he got 1 million yen with. However, Miura unfortunately gradually started slowing down the pace of this series. For example, in 2014 from 2002 there has only been 4 released volumes when he used to release at least 20 at a time. Fans have speculated that he's keeping this series at this pace because he wants to maintain his health and mental well-being. As of 2015, Season 2 of Berserk animation was announced. Miura stated in Young Animal magazine that the anime project will depict Guts and his Black Swordsman appearance, which is only briefly shown in the first and last episode of the 1997 television and anime series that we all know. The magazine also mentioned that the 1997 anime series will also get a new Blu-ray release, which is HD, bros. Anyway guys, that is the end of the video. Holy goddamn, this video was long, and oh my god, it took so many takes, and I still did pronunciation errors. I know I did for sure. But anyway guys, make sure you press the like button. This took so much effort to make. Please share it with anyone you think is gonna enjoy my boring ass voice. And also, make sure you follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page. I've been posting a lot more, and we got some hilarious food war parody coming up and some hilarious videos, and check you guys out. Thanks guys. Alright, judging from that clip, what did you see? What do you think this happened?
I'll be honest, man, I don't know what the fuck this is.